Hi, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this event with Black Girl Finance. I'm Nikki, I'm from Civic Square. Some of you may have known us from Impact Hub. And I'm really excited for Black Girl Finance to be our first event of 2021. And we have kind of branded our book events as Beyond Books. So thank you all for joining us. So I just want to say a little bit about what Beyond Books is. Beyond Books is a platform and a space, a virtual one for now, but hopefully in the not so distant future, a physical space. It's a space where we host change makers, thinkers and creatives who in their own way are giving us writing that makes us kind of reimagine the world that we want to live and work in, where we can imagine a different way of being. And Beyond Books is a platform which gives us a way to platform inclusive voices where we can learn to grow and thrive. Beyond Books, it kind of looks at how books and reading and shared experiences and stories can help us have a better everyday experience in all aspects of our lives. Tonight's conversation will shine a light on an area which is very crucial to our well-being in many ways. I think being savvy with our finances is important at the best of times, but right now in the time that we're in, I think we could all do with learning with some wisdom and experience and practical advice that Selina hopefully will be sharing today. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Black Girl Finance is probably the first mainstream book that's been published where it's been written by a Black woman talking about finance. The world of finance is very much a space that is kind of white-led and kind of white experience. So I think what Black Girl Finance is going to do is shed a light on some of the traditional practices and wisdom and knowledge that our parents and our communities have kind of passed down. One of the things, I won't give too much away about the book, but one of the things that Selina talks in the book, which I really connected with, is something called partners, which I have to admit I didn't know existed in the Black community. From a South Asian Pakistani background, partners are called gametiyan. So we've had the equivalent of partners in our communities for so many years, and I'm a great believer in having them. We hope with this event and this conversation you get a glimpse into how Beyond Books will explore the role of books and reading at Civic Square. Tonight we have Selina in conversation with Daniella Genas from, she's the founder of, Daniella, I beg your pardon, is the founder of She's the Boss, and which is a multi-award winning strategy and innovation organisation. Before I hand over, hi Selina, before I hand over to Daniella and Selina, I just want to say to everyone, do make full use of the chat function, because both Selina and Daniella are more than happy to take questions, and we'll be kind of taking them, we'll be kind of answering questions at the end of the evening, but do post them in the chat. If you haven't already got a copy of the brilliant Black Girl Finance, we've already shared the link in the chat, so do get a copy. Oh, I love how Danny's saying they're in a parda now. So I'm going to hand over to Daniella and Selina, and I look forward to this conversation, and thank you everyone. See you in a while.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Selina, both for joining us, but also for writing this phenomenal book, which I have a copy of. Do you want to just give a kind of brief intro of your background and how you came to write Black Girl Finance book? I'll intro myself in a moment after you've told us a little bit more about you, for those that may not know.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm Selina Flavius. I am the founder of the financial coaching company called Black Girl Finance, and now the author of the similarly titled book, Black Girl Finance, Let's Talk Money. And, I'm from a Black Caribbean background. My mum is from St. Lucia. My dad is from Barbados. I have always had a love of finance, money and finance, but I just didn't feel confident when I was growing up to kind of pursue it as a career or study it. I didn't have any kind of role models myself personally. I know hopefully by now you guys will have role models and know of people who are in the finance sector, but I didn't have any role models myself growing up. So it was a kind of idea that I put on the back burner, but it was still there. It kind of stayed with me as I went through my career in kind of like sales and marketing. And then finally, I kind of decided to pursue my first interest, or what's always been my first interest. So I decided to do a course, create the Black Girl Finance website, and start doing some financial coaching. for women from the community, and then it's just snowballed from there. So yeah, the Black Girl Finance book is kind of a dream that I'd had in the back of my mind for a very long time whilst working doing something else. And it's really nice to share the book with you, because as Nikki explained, prior to Black Girl Finance, prior to this year, there had never been a personal finance book written by a Black woman that I had known of in the UK. There's loads of personal finance books written by US women, and I've read some of them and enjoyed them. But equally, I felt like there was something missing, because our financial systems can be quite different in certain areas. So I really wanted a personal finance book for Black women that look like me. I'm from London, but equally, if you're from somewhere else in the UK, we're in a different kind of financial system. So I'm glad to have written the book for UK women.
And thank you for writing the book for us. And there's a load of questions that I've thought of while she was introing herself, so thank you for that. I'm Daniella Genas, founder of She's the Boss. I support ambitious entrepreneurs to build and grow profitable, sustainable, systems-driven businesses, and part of that is also around supporting people with financial management within a business context. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with you for that reason, but also as a Black woman, now in my mid-30s, I've had quite a journey when it comes to my own personal finances. And there's quite a few questions that I want to ask around kind of some of the issues that I've had and how I've overcome them. But let's start. You decided to launch Black Girl Finance, the background that you had originally come from. What were you doing before? And when you decided to kind of go down this new route, were you supported by the people around you?
Oh my goodness. Such a good question. Such good questions. So I was doing sales and marketing. So I worked for a software company, and to its credit, it really enabled me to have the skills to be able to put myself out there and talk to people. So it was great in that respect. But equally, I had to go through a process myself of managing my money, so getting on top of my money to be able to do the things for me to create Black Girl Finance, i.e. So I once I was able to start managing my money in the best way possible, I started to build savings, for example, and I used those savings to then go and do a technology course, like a web design course, because in the back of my mind, I wanted to be able to build the website or the platform. So I had to get my money in order to be able to take some time to do some self-study, and then I created the platform, and then it just went from there. But in terms of the support, I think the initial person that I spoke to, who was not the demographic, in all fairness, and kind of I was really infused about it, saying I'm going to just create this website and it's for Black women and I did get told, why create the platform, but I persisted with it because I felt like it was something that I would have used had it been around when I was first going out into the world and handling my finances. And I'm glad I did, because, if I had given up on that kind of one, knockback or lack of enthusiasm, then, I wouldn't be here speaking to you guys.
I love to ask that question, because so many people think that people that are in business and who are seemingly successful have the support of everybody around them, and then wonder why they're not receiving that same level of support. But it's not true. And I know that as a fact. So that's why I wanted to kind of start with that. You mentioned that you are the first Black woman in the UK to write a book about finance, and we're in 2021, and that kind of seems phenomenal to me. Why do you think that is? Why do you think you're the first?
I think over the past few years, there has been, I think publishing and the publishing industry has a lot of work to do in terms of inclusion. So there was a stat that I read that showed that in children's books, you get more animals than you get, Black child characters. So equally, I feel like the publishing industry needs to work super, super hard to be more inclusive. One of the first UK, particularly in the UK, one of the first UK books I remember reading by Black women and about Black women was a book called Slay in Your Lane. And when that book came out a few years ago, that kind of really made me feel like, okay, you know, so it's okay to kind of write about the Black UK woman experience, female experience. Suddenly, it really kind of made me, so I felt like there was a sea change. And it's one of those books as well that made me think, okay, so, you know, if they can do it, then I can do it. Do you know what I mean? In terms of, but obviously finance, but I thought if they can do it, I can do it. It felt like the first time actually the Black UK female voice within the industry, within publishing, was being taken seriously. And that book was a phenomenal success as well. So I guess off of the back of that, it's kind of move things forward, but there is still a lot of work to do. And similarly with the book, Candice Braithwaite's I'm Not Your Baby Mother, again, you know, it's talking about the UK female, I guess, nuclear family experience, rather than, you know, the stereotypical baby mother trope that you're probably all familiar with if you're from a certain background on this meeting. So yeah, so those two books really made me feel like, okay, you know, something's happening here. So, you know, when I saw that book come out and read it and really loved it, because it was very, very clear that it was from a UK female perspective, it gave me a bit of hope, and it kind of made me think, okay, it's possible to write the book.
And did you then just go and write a book and then try to get a deal afterwards? What was the process of that? And I asked just out of general inquiry, but also because I want to write a book and I want to know how other people have done it.
You know what? And this is typical for me as a person. I just do things the wrong way round. So, you know, I literally just had the idea to do financial coaching. So I did the coaching first. And then, like I said, well, not like I said, but in the back of my mind, I had this idea to write the book. So I had it written in a notepad somewhere. And then I decided to try and start it. So what I initially did was create ebooks. So I did a little course to decide, and that's one thing, I do a lot of courses. If there's an area that I kind of lack or don't know about, I will kind of find somewhere that will teach me how to do it. And I recorded, I did a live the other day, and I recorded the fact that, yes, I actually did download a little course to do an ebook, just, you know, to create it. So I did an ebook first, and in the back of my mind, the idea was I'm going to do these ebooks, and then at the end of it, put it all together, and that would be my book. And it just so happened that, you know, I'd created the Black Girl Finance brand and was kind of active on social media, and the publisher, the editor for the publisher, approached me and was like, you know, sent me an email randomly one day and was like, you know, I really like your ebook and the way you kind of talk and go across to your readers, you know, would you like to create a book? And for a split second I was like, oh my God, I don't know who this is this happening, is this real? But in the end I just decided, you know what, say yes, just go for it, say yes. And I did. And then from then it's been a lot of hard work to write the book for the release for January, but it was always at the back of my mind, and I guess the stars aligned somewhat to happen.
I love that. I love that you put it out there that you were going to do it, and everything kind of transpired to enable you to do it. I think that's a wonderful way of manifesting your destiny.
Yeah, that's how
yeah, I love it. And also, I love the fact that you do courses. Like, I think that's great. You wanted to do something, let me go out and work out how to do it. Even the fact that you built the platform yourself is, again, quite mind-blowing to me. And your kind of background and experience in marketing then, I assume, would have helped you with being able to market Black Girl Finance, because I messaged you earlier to say I was really purposely trying to avoid any of the interviews that I saw you do, because you've been everywhere. How much of your kind of marketing expertise and the different courses and stuff that you've done informed how you went about promoting the book?
Yeah, do you know what? I just and it goes back to my point of like managing my money. Literally, if I hadn't have got my finances in order, you know, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, I probably wouldn't be speaking to you. You know, I guess when I decided to create Black Girl Finance, like I said, I'm quite aware of the kind of areas that I need to go and work on. So because I was able to manage my money, so start, at the very least start having saving. Prior to that, I was living payday to payday, felt very stressed about finances, just didn't know what I was doing about finances or any strategies around money, had no clue. If I was still where I was, like I say, 5 or 6 years ago, there probably wouldn't be no platform, because, like I said, I'm one of those people that I will go and learn something, and because I've been able to manage my money, I will then take that money, do it I'm sure I did an Instagram course as well to talk about like all of the marketing to get to when I decided to create the platform, I'm like, okay, how do these people or these brands with large following, how did they do that? So I guess it's having that curiosity as well to take the time to kind of study these things. And in terms of the background in sales and marketing, I feel like it's given me such a thick skin. If I get told no today, I can always call again tomorrow, or I can always reach out again tomorrow. So yeah, I'm kind of quite relentless when it comes to kind of pursuing small goals.
I love that. I think that's my favorite phrase: relentless pursuit of goals, success, etc. So moving away kind of from you personally and more towards finance. Within the book, you discuss kind of how your kind of upbringing influenced how you manage money. You are a mother. What kind of lessons are for you the most important in terms of finances that you want to impart? Like, if you could pick one lesson to impart on your son, isn't it? Your son, what would that one lesson be?
I would say I don't know how I can condense this into one lesson. I would say it's kind of like, I would say manage your money so that you can give from your surplus, because particularly at the age that he's at an age whereby, he's just getting a bit older, going out there. And I think the temptation is, particularly when you're younger, to not really think about it, not really think about your finances, because, it's for some distance version of you, many, many years away. And you can make financial decisions that have, long-term impacts. And when I say long-term, I'm talking about when we talk about things such as like your credit score. Some, a missed payment, for example, can be on your credit score for the next 6 years. So I'd say, start managing your money, and often as young people, we do that because we're trying to support our friends and our mates and our could be our significant others as well. So I'd say just be mindful and just kind of care for your finances right now. And if you want to give, then give from your surplus. Give from what you can afford to give, and don't ruin your credit score in the interim. Yeah.
I'm going to come back to the credit score thing, because I want to do a whole series of questions around that. That's the lesson you would give to your son. What is the greatest lesson that you received from your parents around money? Whether that be a direct, and I don't want to give away too much again from the book, but whether that be a direct lesson or an indirect lesson.
So I grew up with my mum, and she's such a hard worker and has always been, and she's one of those people that doesn't sit down. She really has to always be doing something. And I grew up with her working extremely hard. So, for example, she would perhaps get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, go and do a kind of cleaning job, and then come back during the day and then be out again. Luckily, I had older brothers and sisters who'd be at home. My brother didn't move out of the house until he was in his late 20s. So he was there kind of supervising me and my family. So there was always kind of a caregiver there while she worked really hard. So one of the lessons she taught me was to work hard, to want to kind of work hard. Another lesson that she taught me was she actually got on the property ladder. She used the right to buy scheme. So she bought her property, got on the property ladder, and that lesson stayed in my mind. So when as soon as I could, I wanted to get on the property ladder. I wanted to have my own home as well. So that was a lesson. And also just that hard work, that kind of work ethic. I've literally not stopped working for ages.
Please take a break at some point though. Rest is important. I love, again, this idea of because your mum got on the property ladder, you wanted to get on the property ladder. I think that's something within the Black community that is seeming to be a little bit more at the forefront now. But I know when I was younger, owning your own home wasn't really an ideal that people were particularly pursuing. Although within kind of my grandparents' generation, so it would be your grandparents' generation as well, everybody owned their own homes. But then it seemed like something happened in between where home ownership just didn't seem to be that big a deal. And I'm quite impressed and like the fact that it seems to be coming around full circle and property has become a really big thing. What are your opinions on this, all the resurgence, I suppose, in home ownership, all of the kind of groups that are talking about house flipping and all of that kind of thing, and as a viable way of generating kind of additional wealth within the Black community? How useful do you think it is as a strategy?
Absolutely. I think it has its place in a wider portfolio of investments. Not everyone will be in a position to be able to get on the property ladder. I'm seeing really making some comments as well about racism has eased up. So yeah, I mean that has an impact on where we saw the communities dotted about within the UK. So I grew up in Hackney. There was a huge Black community in Hackney. And then also other parts of London, because people were excluded from certain parts. People had to kind of share rooms. If I speak to my parents about what it was like when she came over, or when she first got her first place, it would have, it wasn't a house. It was like a room with some other West Indian families. So yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think it has its place, definitely. And I think, I'll never forget, last year when COVID kicked off, I saw an article, and one of the bits of advice for maybe if you're struggling with your finances was to kind of sell your property, and I thought, okay, well, exactly. And I thought, okay, well, if you've got the option, it's lucky for some, you've got the option to kind of just like sell up, and maybe, I guess the idea was to just rent or something. I don't know, but that idea of kind of releasing some equity, I guess, and to be fair, the fact that that's what some other people are able to do, I think is a positive thing. And I do feel like if you've got a property that has, in the right location, you bought it at the right price, and perhaps there's been some growth in the value of the property, and you're able to maybe pull out some equity to then go and buy another property and all of that kind of stuff. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Also, at the same time, I talk a lot on my platform about having life insurance and things like that, and like wills and things that we don't traditionally like to talk about within the community. And I talk about that because, again, that is a kind of a strategy of passing kind of wealth down. If something happens to you, unfortunately, but at least you will know that your family is taken care of, that the cost of the house is taken care of, it's been paid off, and funeral costs and all of that kind of stuff. So these are strategies being used by other communities, so why not be used by us? So yeah, I think, to your question about the housing, I'd say it is quite positive, if that's what people desire.
Mm-hmm. I think the idea of generational wealth and making sure that if you do pass away, that your children are not indebted and fall into kind of this kind of circle or cycle of continual debt and deprivation, I think is really important. And I think so many more people need to take stock, go out and get home insurance, life insurance, not home insurance, life insurance. And actually the process of buying a house, you have to have life insurance as a requirement. So the two things together actually are helping, I think, future generations, because whatever happens, you're either going to have a house or you're going to get payout to cover the house. And I think that's always a good thing.
Yeah, so, and it's to cut you, just sorry to get in, but like income protection as well, making sure that if we fall sick when we're working, because often we are our biggest assets to begin with, we're going out into the working world, if something happens, all of a sudden we can't pay, for even if it's just rent, or if it's just for your mortgage, these protections are in place for a reason, and they're utilized for a reason. by people from other demographics. So I talk about it all on the platform because I think it's so important that we are protecting ourselves, whether that's our physical property or our physical selves.
Mm-hmm. And income protection, so many people don't have income protection, and it blows my mind. And I talk about this when I talk about how people build businesses that are relying on them, and if they are taken out of their business, the business falls down. Well, the same applies whether you run in a business or you have a job. What happens if you get sick, have some sort of long-term illness that stops you from being able to generate an income? How are you going to pay to live? So please, everybody watching, listening, make sure that you sort out your insurances. And actually, I know somebody personally who had income protection, was advised by a financial advisor to stop paying it and to cancel it. And within, I think, a year or two, had a life-threatening illness, was unable to work again, and therefore wasn't able to claim because they didn't have the insurance anymore. So I think we need to stop living as though life is going to be here forever. We don't know what could possibly be around the corner at any given point.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned credit, and obviously if you want to buy a house also, and not to make this all about home ownership, but it kind of looks in, to be able to buy a house, to be able to buy many things, you need credit. Again, within our communities, an understanding of credit and how credit works, I personally believe is very limited. And I will hold my hands up and say, I didn't really start to properly understand credit until I ran into problems with my credit.
Yeah.
Why do you think that we have such a poor understanding of credit? And what are some of the key things that we should be aware of if we want to build up our credit?
So I'd say, I think it's a lack of conversation. There's such a lack of conversation about it. I think there's a lot of myths about it as well. So there's I know that for myself personally, when I was growing up, I thought that somehow, if something went wrong with your credit, your home, wherever you're living, would be blacklisted. There'd be like a black mark against your property or something, or your name. Also, that things last on your credit file completely forever. If you do something wrong, it's going to be there just indefinitely, and that's not the case. Also, I know that there are people out there who, back to my previous kind of answer to one of your earlier questions, we do things when we're young without thinking about the consequences. And I know people who have, and I'm not just talking about, mobile phone contracts, small amounts, mobile phone contracts. I'm talking about, I know people that have had, paying for cars, put cars in their name for friends or people that they initially trust. So it's those kind of decisions. And then when that person doesn't pay as well, then for whatever reason, maybe you feel like maybe you're not aware that you're obliged to pay it, or it's going to impact on your credit score. They don't pay it, or maybe they do pay it, but equally, you're out of pocket. And then that mark stays, even if it's just one time, and then you notice it, that one mark stays on your credit file, and your credit file goes down. So I just feel like, be careful with those early financial decisions, and like I say, as I talk about giving from your surplus of what you are able to cover, should that person not be able to help or pay or meet their obligation to you, because their obligation is only to you. Their obligation is not to that financial institution that you've signed up for on their name. And if you speak to that financial institution as well, they're not going to accept the fact that, okay, well, I took this out for my friend. So yeah, credit score, it's really, really important, because I know, like you said, Daniella, everyone now wants to get on the property ladder. Particularly in the UK, we are a country of homeowners. Even Boris Johnson was talking about getting first-time buyers on the property ladder. Some scheme he was going to create to get people on the property ladder, and not forget that, in comparison to people maybe in Europe, whereby they're more partial to be renting. So yeah, take care of you. If you have anyone on this call listening and you have dreams and ambitions of being on the property ladder, take care of your credit score. How you can do that: making sure that you are not over indebting yourself. And I read a stat that said like 8.6 million UK adults are overly indebted, so they've got debts that they can't really afford. That's stressing them out. So make sure that if you are taking out any credit, you can definitely afford it. Also, make sure that if you are utilizing credit, you're not utilizing more than 30% of it as well. That's a big thing as well, because it seems to the, you know, any additional credit card company or company that you go for additional credit that you are you can't afford it. You're over indebted. They're going to be thinking, what will happen if, you know, something happens and you can't afford this extra line of credit? So just be careful. Another thing to be mindful of, and I don't want to give everything away from the book, but another thing to be mindful of is applying for credit lots of times in a row. That's a big thing, and I've fallen victim to that when I was bad with handling my money and things were stretched. You know, trying to apply for, you know, to extend my overdraft, being turned down, trying to apply for, you know, a credit card, maybe all in the same week, because maybe at that time I was quite desperate, but trying to do that, not good. Back to property as well. If you are going to try and apply to get a mortgage, making sure that you're not, you know, applying for like a mobile phone contract or something that you don't really need immediately before you apply to go and get that credit as well. Don't do that. So there's a few hints and tips, but I'd say just ones that I want to give away today. You know, use less than 30% of your available credit that you have. Don't be applying for credit consistently. You know, leave some space, especially if you're turned down as well. Leave some space. Do check your credit report. And I did an IG challenge, Instagram challenge, and one of the challenges was to just go and check your credit report, your credit score, because sometimes things on there aren't correct for whatever reason. You need to make sure that you are being judged based on your actual circumstances and your actual past behavior, not by an error or not by not being on the electoral roll as well. So there are a number of different tips for credit score. It's a minefield.
Yeah, definitely go and check. And one of the things that I always say to my clients from a business perspective is don't bury your head in the sand. And I think from a personal perspective, the same principle applies. If you know that there's an issue with your credit, go and check and try to work it out. And I think you kind of mentioned that, you've just mentioned it and you mentioned that in the book. But with financial management generally, I think it's really important to tackle it, because the more you bury your head in the sand, the bigger the problem becomes. I remember having a client that he needed, I can't remember what it was. He needed something for his business. And I said, well, can you not go and ask the bank to give you a short-term loan to pay for it? And he's like, oh no, I've got really bad credit. I've not made enough money. They're not going to give it to me. In the end, I forced him to do it. He went and checked and they said, oh, your business has made more money in the last year than it had in the previous 2 years. You can have it. Go and buy the stuff that you need. But because he'd kind of built this up to be such a big deal and was so terrified of it, he thought it was much worse than it actually was.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I talk about that in the book as well. You know, like I think there's a chapter on net worth, and I remember the first time I checked my net worth, I was horrified. You know, I still had the student loan debt. I'd had, you know, probably not been on the property together for that long, so that mortgage was high. I think I must have had like credit card debt and overdraft, so it was just all looking very, very on top and horrible. And I didn't want to check it again for a long time. And, you know, I wish that I had checked it sooner, because I would have seen how, you know, working hard and paying things off and getting myself in a better financial situation, even the student loan, you know, I don't have student loan debt anymore, which is a nice feeling. Because when I initially looked at it, there was thousands and thousands of pounds worth of debt. And I was like, oh my gosh. So yeah, and I guess, yeah, my point, and I talk about in the book a lot, it's just knowing where you are, not just so that you can kind of panic and feel crap, but, you know, check now, know your circumstances, and then in, you know, 6 months time, check again. In a year's time, you're likely, as you go through life, you know, as you get pay rises, as you know, set up businesses, or you know, in this day and age where we're having multiple streams of income, as you get on the property ladder, you will see a shift and a change in things such as your net worth, and also in things such as your credit score. You know, like I say, things don't stay on your credit score forever, although we tend to believe so. So things do get better, and I think that's the general message of the book. You know, things do get better as you kind of take stock and take control of your situation.
And it's the taking control bit that I think is really important, because the take and stop bit is probably going to be a little bit stressful. And I'm going to be honest, the bit about net worth, I felt personally attacked. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to look at this right now. This is very stressful. But the taking control bit, and I know that when I checked my credit report a few years ago and I realized there were some issues, I became slightly obsessed with trying to fix it. But then what that means is that you're able to put things in place to change the situation so that you don't stay in that situation that might stress you. I'm going to have to build myself up slowly to do that with the net worth conversation, because, as I said, I feel slightly attacked. But I think it's really important that people do take control. And I think the book is a fantastic way for people to start that process. And also, I assume working with you is another way. So, yeah, if anybody is really thinking it's time to take control, definitely make sure you get the book and check out the platform.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I wanted to talk about is, which kind of just inspired me in the last bit that you just said, is this fear.
Yeah.
And fear within the Black community of talking about money, talking about things like net worth. I remember my brother-in-law mentioned his net worth to me a couple of years ago, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that's such poor taste. We don't speak about those things. Why do you think we have such an aversion to speaking about finances, speaking about even how one of my clients mentioned to me the other day, was having a conversation and saying he doesn't understand why as a community we don't share how much we're earning and what our financial goals are, and why are we so closed off about that? Why do you think that is?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm not going to say what it was, but there was an incident which I share in the book where I tried to initiate a conversation about someone's salary and I got knocked back, and that was someone from the community, that was someone close to me. So we just don't talk about it. We don't talk about money. Like I think I read in an article that when my mum got on the property, I think we're slightly better about, you know, financial wins, maybe just ever so slightly, maybe on social media, maybe, because you see, you know, someone gets on a property ladder now, you know, I've seen plenty of tweets about it, you know, people showing around their new property, that we're okay with talking about. Anything else, no. And that includes things like salary, that includes you know, financial successes, you know, bonuses that you get, or, you know, any good investment, maybe investment, you know, cryptocurrency. Everyone talks about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin going up. That's when we talk about it. So I think there are kind of some acceptable areas, but the very, very basics. So, you know, I grew up in a household where no one spoke about it in terms of strategy. So I was speaking to someone the other day and they were saying, you know, the only lesson that they got about money was that you have to work, you have to do something. For me, the only lesson I got about money was to save. But equally, I had no strategy, you know, about how to save. Getting on the property ladder, there wasn't many conversations about it, but I had the visual example of someone getting on the property ladder. Anything else, asking for, you know, negotiating at work, your salary, and that's a big thing that I talk about as well, due to the kind of ethnicity and gender pay gaps. And, you know, investing outside of property, no, you know. So I just feel like we're just not in that. We just haven't been taught to have those conversations about money, and our money habits are formed at such a young age. There's research that shows it's from around the age of 7 or 8. You know, we're formulating these ideas around money. So if you grow up in an environment where it's just not spoken about at all, then that's generally what you would then go and do, which is, it's certainly what I did, basically.
Yeah, it's what I did. I remember my mum asking me when we bought our house. My mum asking me, well, how much did the house cost? And I was just like, panic, think, say something. What am I going to say? I can't say what the house actually was worth. But there's no real reason for that. But then when I think about it, it's because whenever I'd heard anybody ask my mum any money kind of questions, she never would respond either. Yeah. So yeah, I think I was kind of.
Yeah, there is that kind of silence, and it's so funny because there was I had an article, just like a bit of a chapter in the Guardian the other day, and my mum called me because she read it, and she called me laughing her head off, because I think upon reflection she's like, you know, this is really ridiculous. But she called me and she said, you know what, Selina, the 2 things that you weren't supposed to talk to your children about if you're from the Caribbean, one was your age. So, you know, our family are forever young. And that's so true. I asked my friend the other day, "Oh, how old is your granddad?" And she was like, "I don't even know. Like he does his yoga and he does his breath work and he just dyes his hair and no one knows." So I thought, okay, that's a perfect illustration of what my mum said. So you didn't tell your children your age, because I think the feeling is that they'll go and blab and tell everybody. And then also you didn't talk about money to your children as well. And that was just kind of, and even like, you know, the Caribbean traditions where you know, so my mum's called, her name's Chrismina, but then she has an other name called Priscilla. And it's so funny, we were in a group WhatsApp with my son and like my mum and my dad, and then I think my dad called my mum Priscilla, and my son was like he messaged me privately. He was like, "Who is Priscilla?" You know, there's these weird cultural things that, you know, are just so, I guess, so Caribbean. I don't know if anyone in the chat can relate to what I'm talking about.
I can relate. I have an auntie that's called Yvonne, and I remember one year at Christmas, a family friend came around and was shouting for somebody called Pam, and me and my cousins and my brothers were like, "Who is Pam?" And it was actually my auntie's pet name, and we're like, "But Yvonne and Pam, there's no correlation between the two names. What is that about?"
It's just so, it's just unique. And another thing, my mum as well, and I keep on asking because I just thought of this. So my mum, with the superstition of if your hand itches as well, means you're going to get money.
Yes, but which one is it? I always forget. So when my hand itches, I'm like, is it right to give and left to take, or is it the other way around? And I get panicked, like I'm going to lose money. I don't remember which hand.
Yeah, it's all of these different superstitions. And I did a training session, and you know, I think see, she's saying I found out my granddad's real name as a teenager. This is what I mean. This is what I mean. There's just these little things, little quirks about, you know, being Caribbean. I wish I could have fit them all into the book, but I couldn't. It's just so funny. But yeah, and even just the hand, you know, I'm going to win money to play the lottery with my hand with itching as well. You know, that type of mentality makes me laugh now.
Oh, Kemi has said it's left to leave, right to receive. Okay, I'm going to try and remember that. I'm going to write it down. But yeah, so many ingrained things, and I think those ingrained things then dictate how we operate with money. One of the things that I think we really need to do as a community now, and I've started to do it with one of my friends, is being a little bit more open, but setting financial goals and targets. So one of my friends who's also in business, we both last month decided how much we wanted to make per month, like what our target was, and we want to do that by March. So we're both kind of in a competition to see who can make the most money. I'm hoping that I win, fingers crossed, pray for me. And also the end goal of that is if we can both make enough of that money, then we want to buy a property together. So I think we need to have more of those kind of group economic. I think they're talking in the comments earlier, and I know it's in the book, the conversation around partner. I'm in a partner at the moment.
Oh, I love that, because and also what Nikki was saying, you know, do you know what? Let me try and gather my words. Like Nikki was saying, you know, it's something that's similarly done in her community. I think the partner or similar partner schemes are quite common for white British households. You know, I'm sure there's a similar kind of system in like a Chinese household. I was having a conversation with like a charity that deals with economic abuse for women, or women who experience economic abuse, and they were saying, you know, it's something that they see in, you know, women who are from Turkish backgrounds as well. So I'd say it's very common outside of, you know, people from white British backgrounds, because often they're like, what is a partner? When I've been in rooms and had conversations, but you know, like Nikki's just explained what like if you're from a South Asian background, what the partner system is called there. I know that from an African background, it can be called the susu as well. And I'm sure I even saw a video recording, some social media thing where someone from the Caribbean was calling it a susu as well. So, you know, we have these systems, and unfortunately they exist because traditionally we were kept out of the financial systems. So we had to create our own solutions to be able to help each other build and, you know, get on the property ladder or build businesses. And and I'm so happy that they still exist. I was asked to be part of a partner like last year, but I didn't. I've never been part of a partner, but certainly my mum did. My mum was, and she found it really useful.
Well, I'm in the Dope Black Mums partner, so thank you to the Dope Black Mums group, because they enabled me to pay to have my loft converted last October, so that was great. I was the second hand, so that was exciting. When we talk about, I suppose, kind of economic disadvantage within Black communities, and specifically for Black women, one of the things that was quite striking in the book was that the gender pay gap would take 257 years to close, and that's without taking into consideration the ethnicity pay gap. So how Black women specifically, how long it would take for Black women to catch up with white men, let's just say. What are some of the kind of, first of all, it sounds very depressing. Like, it's 257 years is a long time, right? But I don't want it to be a depressing thing. When we think about strategies for kind of closing that gap, we can pretty much safely say that just being employed is not necessarily going to be a way of generating additional income if we're going to take into consideration sexism, racism, the glass ceiling, and all of that stuff. So when we start to think about other methods, so having multiple income streams, one of the things that you kind of mentioned briefly earlier was around investment, and the fact that we as Black women, you mentioned in the book, should be investing more, and that you don't need loads of money to invest. I realized that was a really long-winded, not really a question, but talk to us a little bit more about kind of investment and the idea of using investment as a way of creating additional wealth when we may not necessarily be able to do it in the same way in employment, for example.
Well, I think if you know, because not everyone's going to be kind of side hustling and entrepreneur, and it's quite funny, I've been seeing a lot of posts about that fact on social just this week. For some reason, everyone's just had enough now. We're in the second month of Feb, and they're fed up of everyone talking about getting their side hustle on, I guess. So I've seen quite a few posts, and just to say, it is possible to, if you read certain books around personal finance, like, for example, there's a book called Think and Grow Rich, The Black Choice, and that is like, it's Think and Grow Rich, but it's like a Black version. So he spoke to Black people around kind of money management, and the key was, and the thing is, they didn't just speak to kind of entrepreneurs or business people, they spoke to people who were employed. So I think it is possible with good money management, even when you are employed, to build wealth. And another thing I should say as well, at this moment in time, when it comes to, if you're employed, you're likely going to be put into a workplace pension because it's a requirement. Companies are required to open up workplace pensions for you, and pensions are often invested somewhere. They're not just kind of keeping the money somewhere. So, a strategy to be able to then, I guess, build wealth from being employed would be to make sure you don't opt out of your workplace pension. And it's quite funny because I was speaking to someone a while ago who had opted out because they had studied and they had student loan, and they thought, okay, you can see that money coming out before tax, and you're just like, no. But I would say no, definitely stay invested in there, because and as soon as you can, start. Okay, I didn't, when I started working, you didn't have to be in a workplace pension scheme. It was optional. They didn't put you in one with the option to opt out. You didn't have to be in any. So I didn't, and that's a period of time whereby that, like I say, typically pensions money is invested somewhere, and the longer you leave it, the more you benefit from something called compound interest, which is your money earning interest on interest on interest on interest and interest. And that's what we want. And the sooner you start, the more compound interest you will earn. So I definitely encourage you, if you are working, definitely opt into your workplace pension scheme. If you can, kind of max out your contribution, because some employers will match what you put in. There's also government kind of tax breaks with it as well. So why not? it's free money from the government at the very least, whether or not your employee then your employer contributes as well. And like I said, you will benefit from compound interest. And it's a similar thing if, I'm going to change the topic slightly, for if you have a young family, for example, making sure that you start some sort of investment for them from a very young age. And again, it's to build up that compound interest, because it takes longer to catch up. If you start doing it later, I'm not saying you shouldn't. If you've left it a bit later, definitely do. So I do feel like those are mechanisms being employed whereby you can kind of grow wealth and benefit. And I say that as someone who, I've got my workplace pension, and I can check and see how much is in there and what it's estimated to be in, whatever retirement age I want to be, because you can often create an account with Aviva or wherever your workplace is in pension is invested, whoever's managing the account, and you can check and see. And similarly, I worked for a software company, and they had shares. They had an employee share scheme, and literally maybe like last month they changed CEO. They got a new CEO from a rival competitor company, and the share price doubled. So again, investing, I wouldn't, I doubled my money literally doing nothing. So it's really, really important. And back to the workplace thing, we do see that there is a penalty when for women, when they kind of leave the workplace to maybe have a family, or they're out of the workplace, have a family, and maybe when they go back as well, they're working part-time to fit around the family as well. And we do see, that's typically when pensions contributions stop. And I've had conversations with groups who are trying to encourage, like with the Money and Pension Service, who are trying to encourage, I guess, men to, if they have a family, because obviously it takes more than one person to create kids, if you're not going to kind of take time to take, equally share the childcare, also, be contributing into your partner's pension, so that there's not that period where it kind of stops. So there's all these, there's ways. I know, I'm so sorry, I'm going on and on, Daniella, I'm so sorry. But
it's making me think I need to have a word with my husband, because when we have another child, he's going to have to do that. Now you've just mentioned it, so thanks for that. Didn't think of it.
As well as encouraging, allowing men to take, good, child paternity leave as well, and managing childcare as well. So yeah, I think it is possible within workplaces, and that's, I guess that's why the government encourage workplaces to get people to open up the pensions in the first place, because we don't know what the government pension scheme is going to look like in, whenever we retire, in like 50 years time, or 60 years time, however old we are. I don't know on the group, but we don't know what that's going to look like.
I really want to ask loads of questions about pensions, but I'm looking at the time, so I'm going to try and hold it down. Final question, which isn't actually referenced in the book, or if it was, I missed it, but I think it's really important. Black tax.
Oh, do you know what? Yes, if there was more time, there would have been a chapter on black tax. There would have been a chapter on like planning for future events and things. Yeah.
I think it's this is something that is a real bugbear for me. For people that don't know what black tax is, can you just give us a little bit of a breakdown? And also, what I suppose the next question is, if you're trying to manage your finances effectively, if you're trying to grow wealth, if you're trying to balance, how do you break away from the black tax?
Yeah, so the black tax is where you are giving your money away to support family, and it could be like family back home. Traditionally it was. So for example, my grandparents came over here from Barbados. They would be sending money back home to support their family back home. So my great grandma and my great granddad. And it's a beautiful thing, because I was speaking to my dad the other day, and the house that they have that was built, it's been in the house for like a century now, almost a century, because and that was due to my grandparents sending money back home to build that bricks and mortar house. But does it need to be a similar thing? Does anyone in my family over here now need to be kind of sending money back home like my grandparents needed to back then? I would argue no. So, but we still see this tradition happening. So I would just say, like I guess what I initially said, being able to put yourself in the best financial position so that you can give from surplus if you want to, if you know that people are not taking the mickey as well. But I know that it is a thing. I know that we like to help, particularly when we feel like we've kind of come up a bit and we're in a better financial position. We like to help, but equally, I guess encouraging people to help themselves when you have helped yourself, having those open conversations about what you have done to put yourself in that better position. And those are the two things I would say on the black tax. I just think it still exists because it's literally just our culture. But if it's kind of hurting you, then I would try and figure out a way to kind of get away from it.
Yeah, and I think there's for me there's a difference between black tax and helping. Yeah. Because helping is from surplus. Like, I can afford to help you with this, so I'm going to help you. For me, in my opinion, black tax is when I only have this amount and there is an expectation, there is a demand that I give you this amount, and then I'm left with this amount, which I think is a slightly different thing. And I think that so many people that are in that situation are not able to move financially forward and are often in a cycle of poverty, because I'm just paying out money and I can barely afford to keep a roof over my own head, but I'm keeping a roof over 10 other people's heads who are sitting down and not doing anything. And I think that can be quite detrimental to financial growth. Whereas actually, if I could just pause on this tax for a minute, build myself up, then there's going to be more surplus in the end if you can just hold tight for a minute and let me use the money to do stuff to generate more income. But yeah, it's something that I'm slightly passionate about, because I've seen people in that situation where they're really struggling, but they will give their last to somebody else who doesn't actually really appreciate it. But let me not labor on the point too long. We've had a couple of questions. So Brenda, hi Brenda, says she has 4 credit cards and the limit between them is 17k, but because I owe under 1k across them all, the banks are reducing my limits. Haven't used my overdraft, so NatWest reduced it by 50%. How much does this disadvantage me? Should I use them more just to service them?
Well, I would just say, just think about that 30% rule, because unfortunately, banks like to see us using credit. They like to see us using credit. But manage it. And then also another thing about credit is, you only need to think about credit if you're going to apply for something. If you're not going to apply for something in the kind of near future, I would say just don't let it bother you. Just make sure you're not, etc. But don't let it bother you. At the end of the day, if you're not going to apply for something, don't stress about it. I definitely say, if you know that you're going to do it 3 to 6 months, then work it. Try and put yourself in the best possible position possible. But so obviously, if you've got 17k, but you're only using £1,000, then that's definitely a low amount. My credit score at the moment is not the best. I've got a credit card, and actually the credit card is paying me because I'm just not using it, and it gives me cash back. So they probably hate me, but at the same time, I have no plans to apply for anything in the near future. So I'm just not stressed about it.
If anyone else has any more questions, please drop them in the comment box. Selina, I've really enjoyed talking to you, and more importantly, I really, really enjoyed the book. What I really love about the book is the fact that you've got actionable parts where we can actually go away and do tasks. And as I said, I feel slightly triggered by some of the tasks. And in my head, I've made a mental note that I have to do them within the next 4 weeks, because they are overdue, and also because I tell my clients to make sure that they've got a hold of their finances, and sometimes I bury my head in the sand. And this book has really encouraged me to practice what I preach, to face it, to do it, and to work out what my net worth is, even if it is just to be able to to plan for when my net worth is going to be, what, 5 million? And working out how long it's going to take me to do that. I need to know where I'm at right now first.
And you know, I just to say, book is really, I want people to do. I want people to read it and actually take action, because that's the only way we're going to change things. Because it's one thing to read a book and absorb it and kind of leave the action steps until you've forgotten about it in a week's time. But yeah, no, it's ultimately at heart a personal finance book. Those personal finance tools and hints and tips, but it's just I hope you find it to be an interesting one that really kind of galvanizes you into action.
Mm-hmm. What I did also, just as a point, obviously I've got the physical copy, but I also downloaded the Audible and was listening along. So well done to you for recording that. Was that difficult?
Yeah. Oh gosh, you know what? It wasn't too difficult because I do the podcast.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so it wasn't too difficult.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you for that. And you, just as a final point, you mentioned somewhere in the book, I can't remember which part, about the importance of writing down your financial goals. When I do with my clients, I have a process called Vision 20 where we create a full vision, but part of that is the financial goal. And that's what I always say. Don't just leave it on your computer or in a book. Print it out, stick it on your wall. So right now I'm in my kitchen because my husband kicked me out of my office. But directly behind on the wall, I've got my financial target for the quarter. So I said I'm doing that kind of goal setting with my friend. It's written on the wall. I see it every day. Every time I come into the kitchen, I can see how much I'm working towards. So on the days where I'm like, oh, I can't bother to do anything today, no, I need to hit that goal. So I would definitely agree and encourage everyone to set yourself quarterly financial goals and annual financial goals, but also long-term financial goals. So how much do you want to earn in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? When do you want to retire? How much are you going to need to retire? That's another thing.
Because we don't really retire here, you know. I spoke to someone yesterday who's in St. Kitts, and I didn't even know. I was having a conversation with her, and she was like, "We moved to St. Kitts." I was like, "What?" You know. Yeah, you know, yeah, definitely, and that's that's been a dream of hers for ages, and she made it happen. So yeah, let's dream big. What I'm going to say, and talk. Yes, big, yeah, think big. Absolutely.
But also make sure that you take action. There's no point having the big dream if you're not going to get up and do the work, put the work in to be able to achieve it. Brenda said she has another question. Brenda, if you want to drop that question in the chat box. But yeah, if you are thinking of relocating, you definitely need to get your finances in order. But also having property, I think, again, I'm just going to keep saying what my points are. As a community, I think it's really important that we start to look at land and home ownership in our native countries. I think that's really something that we haven't, as a community, been doing for a while, particularly the kind of younger generation. And maybe we need to start thinking about that so that if we do want to retire at an older age, we have somewhere to go and we have some ownership there.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
So, I was going to say, Brenda said, does being Black female with an African name disadvantage me when applying for mortgage or remortgage? No. Two people said, yeah, well, I technically have an African surname because my married name is Ogabanjo. My husband's name is Ogabanjo, and we were able to get a mortgage. So
yeah, I would say no. And if there's even any hint of that, you need to complain. And I talk about complaining in the book. I talk about someone who had a bad experience with a bank, and you know, you need to advocate for yourself. If there's even a whiff of that happening, you need to complain. There's the financial ombudsman, I can't remember the full name, financial services ombudsman or something. Yeah, no, that should not in this day and age, that should not happen. It might happen when we go and apply for jobs, unfortunately. So, you know, but you know, mortgage, no way. They just want your money. It makes sense.
Well, thank you so much, Selina. If people are not already following you on social media, do you want to share your, well, it's fairly obvious, but do you want to share anyway?
Black Girl Finance UK. And then also just to say as well, I don't know if I'm allowed to say, we are doing our first finance festival for the year. Basically our first workshop for the year. So, follow me on Black Girl Finance UK, and we will share details about that as well. We're doing some early bird tickets for that event.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Black Girl Finance UK on Instagram, and is that on Twitter as well? Black Girl Finance.
Yeah, that's correct, on Twitter. Yes, really different. The handle's gone.
And make sure that you get the book. Definitely a worthwhile investment. And well done to you, Selina, not only for writing the book, but also for all of the fantastic promotional work that you've done. Really appreciate it. And for those who are not following me, I am on Instagram at She's the Boss UK. And yeah, if you're interested in business and growing additional income through growing your business, please do get in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you both for such a riveting conversation. And I think finance is one of those areas where, you both picked up on this, touched upon it at the beginning of your conversation, kind of parts of our lives, particularly for people of colour, as elders, as a community, we don't feel comfortable talking about. So I'm so glad you've written this book. And I just want to read towards the end of the page, end of the book, Selina, you've put in, this book is not about getting rich quick. It's about giving you financial peace of mind and improving your money management skills. And I think the book, there's not only does it have loads of tips and practical ideas of what to do. And, Daniella, I just quite like what you just shared about having it, visual, and you can see what your goal is. But you've also put like names of key people who are doing great work in finance, as well as recommended reads. This whole conversation, there's so many things in terms of crossover culturally, and I think this is way overdue. So thank you so much for putting this together, and for having the platform and having a space where Black women in particular can go somewhere to think about their futures, because there's so many things that are stacked against women of colour. So having something like this, if we've got the basics covered, it makes life that little bit more easier. So thank you so much for both of you giving up your time tonight to share your insights. And Daniella, thank you so much for hosting the conversation. And if you're not already following Daniella from She's the Boss on Twitter and on all the socials, please do so. And likewise for Selina. And if you have got a copy of the book, or you're about to get a copy, please do share. I think I posted it earlier on in the chat. Do tag us on socials and hashtag Beyond Books, and share, let us know what you've learned from the book, and if you know of a woman who could do with this book, get them an early birthday or Christmas present if you can, and try and support an independent, because I know there's other platforms where you can get a copy of the book cheaper, but it's also supporting the local people and smaller guys who are selling books. So thank you, and hopefully everyone's had the chance to ask any questions. And if not, I'm sure they'll be following you on socials to ask. So thank you, everyone, and good night.